Hello, Ray Phoenix here. This is Star Wars Jedi Starfighter for the PS2. This is a pretty cool little air combat space shooter type game, 3D shooter game. Very similar to Star Fox 64 and the original Star Wars Rogue Squadron and air combat. This is a sequel to Star Wars Starfighter, which came out on the PS2 about a year or so earlier in 2001. This game came out in 2002, around the time Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, came out. The first Star Wars Starfighter game coincided with the events of Star Wars Episode 1, and this game coincides with the events of Star Wars Episode 2. This game actually has a much better story than Star Wars Episode 2. There's no boring political nonsense in this game. There's no boring, mushy, fluffy romance scenes that Anakin Skywalker had with Padme. There's none of that in this game. This game just has what Star Wars should be. Action, battles, adventure. That's what any great Star Wars game should have, and this game pulls it off perfectly good. This is better than the first Star Wars Starfighter game. This is better than Star Wars Rogue Squadron 3 on the GameCube. It's not necessarily better than the first two Rogue Squadron games. So the first Rogue Squadron game was on the N64, and the second one was on GameCube. The second and third ones were on GameCube. But the third Rogue Squadron game really took a lot of time and spent a lot of time with ground combat levels, which that should really be left for Star Wars Battlefront games, not these shooter-type games. And this game, again, I keep saying, this game is very good. You can fly the Jedi Starfighter in this game, which is a really big plus, because that was a big thing in Star Wars Episode 2, was a Jedi Starfighter. Which is really maneuverable. It's like a precursor to the A-Wing, pretty much. The A-Wing from Star Wars Episode 6, Return of the Jedi, evolved from the Jedi Starfighter. You could target enemies in this game like you could in the original original Star Wars Starfighter. You could select them. You can even use force powers on them too, like force lightning and force shield. You can destroy a bunch of them. Yeah, it's really fun. There's other ships you can fly in this game too, which you will see in the next level. You can also fly bomber ships. You can even fly some ships in the original trilogy, which you'll see later on. We're on some kind of beach planet right now, as you can see, where you shoot down the enemy fighters. And I think this would be a great time to talk about the legacy of Star Wars Episode 2. Something a lot of people don't really think about when they think of Star Wars Episode 2. Legacy and Star Wars Episode 2 are two words that don't belong in the same sentence, as most people would say. Star Wars Episode 2 was the second Star Wars prequel. It had a really big opening. It was highly anticipated, like Star Wars would also be highly anticipated. It was also the first Star Wars movie that was not number one at the box office. It was beaten by Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers, and the 2002 Spider-Man movie, which I can't say the same for Lord of the Rings, because Lord of the Rings, I don't like Lord of the Rings that much. I think it's very boring. Three movies of people walking, come on. But I definitely see why the 2002 Spider-Man movie beat Star Wars Episode 2 at the box office. It definitely had the right to do that. Because Spider-Man 2002 was a much better movie than Star Wars Episode 2. That's when we're introduced to Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man. Come on, Tobey Maguire is everyone's favorite Spider-Man, right? Come on, we all know that. We all know that. Fans of the early 2000s all know that. And it did have much better. It was a much better movie overall. And Star Wars Episode 2, even though it was being by its movies, it still made a lot of money. It still grossed a lot of money. It was overly dominated with CGI. Like CGI this, CGI that. Almost everything that appeared in that movie, except for the people themselves, were CGI. The clone troopers that appeared in that movie were CGI. The battle droids that appeared in that movie were CGI. Almost every single set that appeared in that movie was CGI. Even simple stuff, like when a character is standing by the window. Even simple stuff like that was CGI. Because George Lucas is all big. I'm like, oh, look at what my computer could do. Ha ha, your computer can't do that. Ah ha ha. Yeah, we don't know. Yeah, because come on, George Lucas doesn't even really think that better computers mean better storytelling. Well, they don't. It's the writing that does. It's the creative imagination that does, not a computer. So the original trilogy movies were legendary classics, and those were made with the complete absence of CGI. That was before they started adding CGI into them, which we know that didn't turn out very well. That's what the original theatrical versions of Star Wars were for, because they didn't have any CGI in them, which actually were released on DVD eventually on a rare, well, not necessarily rare, but a limited edition release, once in 2006 and again in 2008, which actually have the original theatrical versions of Star Wars on DVD, which I won in an auction on eBay back in 2014. I've already told that story before in some of my videos. I made a lot of other Star Wars videos too, so there's a lot of Star Wars games. The Star Wars probably has more, Star Wars franchise might have more video games than there are of any other franchise there is. There's hundreds of Star Wars games. There's that Star Wars arcade game that's on the Atari 2600. There's a Star Wars Empire Strikes Back game, also on the 2600. There's a Star Wars Death Star battle game, which is Return of the Jedi game for the 2600. There's a Star Wars Jedi Arena game on the 2600, which sucked. There was a Star Wars game on the Famicom, which sucked, where you pretty much die when you touch anything. Where Luke Skywalker pretty much becomes Bugsy Bobcat, where he gets killed when he touches anything. And then there's Star Wars for the NES, and then there's Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back game on the NES, and there's the Super Star Wars games, which kind of sucked in my opinion. A lot of people say the Super Star Wars games were awesome. I don't think so. I think the Super Star Wars games sucked. There was that Star Wars arcade game on the Sega 32X, which I already made a video about that. It wasn't a bad game. This game's probably better, though. This is probably a better game, though, but Star Wars for the arcade for the Sega 32X, it was pretty cool back in 1994. There was Star Wars Dark Forces, a first-person shooter, much like Wolfenstein 3 or Doom. There was... What else is there? There was Star Wars Shadows of the Empire, Star Wars Rogue Squadron, Star Wars X-Wing, Star Wars TIE Fighter, Star Wars X-Wing vs. TIE Fighter, Star Wars X-Wing Alliance, Star Wars Starfighter, Star Wars Jedi Starfighter, Star Wars Rogue Squadron. So now we're in another level, finally, after a long time waiting. The levels in this game are very long. You don't get any lives in this game, too. So if you die once, you have to do the whole level over again. Yeah, that's how cruel these people were when they made this game. So we're flying the X-Wing this year. The X-Wing is actually a bonus craft you can unlock in the game. But later in the game, you can use it. I thought it'd be cool to show this off. Yeah, I don't know how an X-Wing would end up in Star Wars Episode 2, though, or the era of Star Wars Episode 2. Because the Rogue Squadron games had the Naboo Starfighter. It was pretty interesting, because the first Star Wars Rogue Squadron game was released months before Star Wars Episode 1 was released, and Star Wars Episode 1 was the first movie to have the Naboo Starfighter in it. But it was still really good, still worked out very well. But this game has the X-Wing in it, and people knew what the X-Wing was, of course, because it was in the original trilogy. But how would an X-Wing, same from the original trilogy thing, it's not supposed to have happened yet in the timeline we got here? Well, I guess time travel is probably how that happened. But then again, there haven't really been any Star Wars stories of time travel. I mean, come on, even expanded universe stories don't seem to have any time travel. There doesn't seem to be any time travel in Star Wars at all. Which is, I don't know, maybe there will be one in a future movie or something, I don't know. They should make a Star Wars time travel movie. I'd pay money to see that. Then again, I'd pay money to see anything that's Star Wars, because Star Wars is just that kind of franchise. Star Wars is a lot better than Lord of the Rings, in my opinion. It's a lot better than a lot of other franchises, in my opinion. It's definitely a lot better than Twilight, right? I mean, as much as I'm not a big fan of the prequels, I'd much rather watch them over Lord of the Rings or Twilight or James Bond or stuff that I'm not really a big fan of. So we have to take out the space station, as you can see here. And of course, there's more of those Scarab fighters. There's two that are getting in our way. So the space station is located somewhere around a nebula, as you can see in the background. We have to shoot down its defenses. This is actually, believe it or not, this is actually kind of more like some of the Star Wars X-Wing games. A lot of those Star Wars X-Wing games, you often have to fly to a space station or shoot stuff down. At the same time, in those games, you gotta be careful with what your weapon's power, or what your overall shielding is, and other power things too. It was like a Star Wars X-Wing game, X-Wing TIE Fighter games. It's really just a simulation, more like a simulation type game. I always like to really fly a starcraft. And this game is more like Rogue Squadron. It's more like trying to be an arcade style shoot 'em up type game, which I guess that's better for some people, better in a lot of cases. The X-Wing is one of the better fighters in this game. It's not as good, necessarily better than the Jedi Starfighter, but it does have a good amount of weapons. You have proton torpedoes, the type of proton torpedoes that destroyed the Death Star in Star Wars Episode 4. So that's what the X-Wing is most famous for. It's most famous for being the Starcraft, the Starfighter that went against the Death Star and was destroyed. Luke Skywalker flew one for the first time, and he destroyed the Death Star. Kind of like when Harry Potter first flew a broom in Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, and he ended up becoming the Gryffindor Seeker, and one of the youngest players in Quidditch to ever do that. That's why I often compare Harry Potter to Luke Skywalker. They're both very similar. They're both average-seeming people, came from conflicted households. They end up with an incredible opportunity. They end up in some kind of magical world. And they do something for the first time, and they end up winning. They get into trouble or stuff like that happens, and they end up being successful at the end. Luke Skywalker and Harry Potter are very similar characters, and the Harry Potter movies are coming out at this point in time, too. I really like the Harry Potter movies. I mean, I love Philosopher's Stone, and I love Chamber of Secrets, too. I also read all the books too, but you really should read all the books first before you watch those movies. I actually got Thor in a Ravenclaw house as well. It's a house of strange and intellectuals. So yeah, I'm a Ravenclaw. If I was to go to Hogwarts. I wish Hogwarts were a real place. I'd love to be admitted into Hogwarts. And Darth Vader would be admitted into Slytherin. Of course, what else would he be admitted into? So yeah, this is the boring part. This is what you do on this game. You just basically stationed around, just like a stationary spot where you have to just point out fighters. Right now, my mission is the objective is literally just destroy the Scarab fighters, or destroy whatever fighters there are. Oh, then destroy the freighters too. So here's an armed freighter coming at. You can see its shielding. You can see its specific shield level, and you can see its other hull levels, and yeah, so we destroyed it. So you can see there. It's really easy to do stuff. This is one of the easier levels in the game. It's also a good example of what the game's capable of doing. Later levels in this game get very hectic and very challenging and troublesome. There's one level of the game that was just downright bad to play, downright all broken up. So I had to put the game on easy just to complete that level. And again, it ties in with Star Wars Episode 2 when the Clone Wars is beginning, which is what began Star Wars: The Clone Wars. Where those clones, those white-suited troop things, have to fight battle droids. And George Lucas does have a crazy mind. But then again, where would our world be without George Lucas? I think I've shown you enough of this game. This is Ray Phoenix, signing out.